Hello everyone, and welcome to the Week 13 NFL Player Prop Show. My name is Dylan Bird, here once again on Sal Vetri's YouTube channel, and we got a lot to talk about in terms of player props. Today, we got a unique week in the NFL coming up. We just had a unique week prior to this because of the whole Steelers-Ravens thing. We got that Wednesday afternoon football. This week, we will have 2 games on Monday and then 1 game on Tuesday. So a lot of the Tuesday game props for the Ravens and Cowboys aren't up yet, so that will not be included in this show. If I decide to add props for that game, I will be sure to tweet it out, so be sure to be following me on Twitter at sports_bird. If you aren't already following me there, that is where I do update picks. I sometimes sub out picks as well from the show if things change by kickoffs on Sunday or Monday night, so be sure to be following me there. But just to recap, last week we had a great Thanksgiving. We went 7-1 on NFL player props, and then I also went 7-1 the week before that. So I was 14-2 in my last 16 player props. I was absolutely on fire, and then followed it up Sunday. Went 4-5 if you were following my exact card from Twitter. I happened to get Mecole Hardman at a little bit of a higher line than I actually tweeted out, and I missed it by half a yard. So I ended up going 3-6. So time to bounce back this week for sure. Now, usually I go back and recap each pick, but 17 props is just way too much to go over, so we're going to skip that for this week. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind you to be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. It really helps me out. It really helps Sal out. I already mentioned that if you're not following me on Twitter, be sure to do that at sports_bird. Also, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, SportsBird. The link is in the description below to that. I do my waiver wire show every single Tuesday. I also do my college football betting picks every single Friday. So if you're into that stuff, be sure to subscribe to that channel as well. Now, once the season begins to wind down and fantasy football is over, I will be not doing, obviously, the waiver wire show anymore, and I'll likely be adding college basketball betting picks and possibly NBA prop bets for when the season starts up as well. So really looking forward to getting that stuff going. In addition, I just wanted to remind everyone that this NFL Player Prop Show is sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. You could go to Monkey Knife Fight and they'll match your deposit 100% up to $50 with the promo code VETRI, VETRI. If you love prop betting, Monkey Knife Fight is an amazing place to take advantage of this great deposit bonus. Now let's get right into the player props. For our first NFL player prop of Week 13, we are looking at Jonathan Taylor's rushing yards line, which is at 50.5 against the Houston Texans. Now, Jonathan Taylor missed Week 12 because he was on the COVID list. He will be back this week. Now, Indianapolis comes into this game against the Texans with a 53% run blocking advantage. That is the 3rd highest in the NFL this week. In addition, the Texans defense is absolutely dreadful. They rank 27th in run defense, 24th in tackling, and 31st in rushing yards allowed per game with 154.7. Jonathan Taylor's touches, they've been wishy-washy all year. He has been splitting with Nyheim Hines. He has been splitting with Jordan Wilkins. But if you look at Week 11 against the Packers, which was the last game that Jonathan Taylor did play in, he had 22 carries for 90 yards rushing. So I believe that the Colts are beginning to gain the trust back of Jonathan Taylor that they did lose mid-year. Now, I don't expect him to go over 20 carries again, but all he has to do is get in the mid-teens in order to probably hit this over line, and I think that he should be able to get in the mid-teens in terms of carries, and that is why with this easy matchup, I like Jonathan Taylor's over 50.5 rushing yards in this game. Our second player prop that we are going to look at this week, we have Brandon Cooks' receptions line, which is over under 5.5 against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, before we get into the details of this player prop, we were struck with some huge NFL news this week as Texans star wide receiver Will Fuller was suspended for 6 games, so that's the rest of the season plus 1 next year because he failed a drug test. And now as a result, Brandon Cooks becomes the #1 wide receiver on the Houston Texans. A Houston Texans offense, actually, that is playing really well since Bill O'Brien got fired. Deshaun Watson has been firing on all cylinders. And it's also important to keep in mind that Randall Cobb is on IR. He's injured, and Kenny Stills just got released. So it's basically Brandon Cooks and Kiki Kute who are the 2 options on this offense to catch passes. Now, the Texans come in with a 38% pass blocking advantage this week against the Indianapolis Colts. That's the 2nd highest in the NFL this week. Also, Cooks comes in tied 6th for the highest matchup advantage this week in terms of wide receivers and cornerbacks. He has a 44% matchup advantage against Indianapolis cornerback Rock Ya-Sin. In addition, going back to Will Fuller, he was averaging 6.8 targets per game, 4.8 receptions per game. So this production is going to have to be distributed to other players on the offense, and a lot will go to Brandon Cooks. Cooks is averaging 4.5 receptions over his past 4 games, but I believe that this production will increase a solid amount for the rest of the season with Fuller out, with Cobb out for another few weeks, and with Stills gone as well. So I expect Cooks' production to go sky high, and as a result, I love Cooks' over 5.5 receptions in this game against the Colts. For our third NFL player prop on this slate, we have Justin Jefferson over under 66.5 receiving yards in the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Justin Jefferson has been one of the most fun players to watch in the entire NFL this year. He's been absolutely unreal, and he has that great touchdown dance every single time he scores. I don't know what it's called. I'm blanking out right now, but it's very, very recognizable. Now, he currently ranks 7th in the NFL in receiving yards with 918. That's 83.5 receiving yards per game. In addition, he's averaging 17.7 yards per reception, which ranks 7th in the NFL, and 12.8 yards per target, which ranks 1st in the NFL. So he's being targeted deep a lot. He has been catching a lot of long passes, and Minnesota comes in this game with a 30% pass blocking advantage against Jacksonville, which ranks the 5th highest in the NFL this week. Also, Jacksonville's defense is dreadful. They rank tied 29th in coverage, 30th in pass rush, and 29th in opponent passing yards per game with 279.5. Jefferson has the 4th highest matchup advantage in the NFL this week in terms of wide receiver cornerbacks. He has a 51% matchup advantage over Trey Herndon. He's been a lot more consistent lately as well. Like Justin Jefferson early in the season, he would go like 2 weeks without doing anything, and then he would go off 1 week, another 2 weeks without doing anything, and then go off. Now it seems to be that he's put everything together and he's been a lot more consistent. He has had over 66.5 receiving yards in each of the last 3 weeks, and I believe that Justin Jefferson will go over 66.5 receiving yards once again this week. Now, I spoke about Justin Jefferson's touchdown dance before. I may have to do something on Twitter where I'll tweet out, if this tweet gets blank amount of retweets and Justin Jefferson hits his over receiving yards, I'll do the Justin Jefferson touchdown dance for everyone and post the video on Twitter. I think that'd be a pretty funny addition to this week's player prop show. But moving on here to our 4th player prop of the week, we have James Robinson over under 75.5 rushing yards in the game against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, James Robinson, the undrafted rookie running back, he's been a major surprise this year. He ranks 1st in the NFL in opportunity share at 86.1%, so he's getting a ton of carries, a ton of targets from the Jaguars. He's also averaging 80.9 rushing yards per game, and he's cleared this 75.5 line 4 of his last 5 games, going over 100 rushing yards in 3 of them. The only game that he did not clear this 75.5 line out of the last 5 was against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have the best defense in the NFL, and he had 73, so he was just 3 yards short from clearing it. Now, the Jaguars come into this game with a 28% run blocking advantage, the 7th best in the NFL this week. In addition, the Vikings are not good against the run. They rank 25th in run defense, 22nd in tackling, and 19th in opponent rushing yards per game with 120.7 allowed. I like Robinson's over 75.5 rushing yards in this game. I also think that it will be a close game, which is going to play a role. Jacksonville, even though they're 1-10, they seem to keep every game close. As long as they are close, they will run the football a decent amount with James Robinson, and I think James Robinson hits his over here against the Minnesota Vikings. For our 5th NFL player prop that we are going to talk about today, we're looking at Sterling Shepard's receptions line, which is at over under 4.5 against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, we had big injury news last week as Giants quarterback Daniel Jones hurt his hamstring, was out for the game, and now looks like he will miss the game in Seattle for Week 13. Now, Colt McCoy is taking over as the starting quarterback. Now, the line for this was probably adjusted for that already, but Sterling Shepard, he has at least 6 catches in all 5 games since he returned from his injury this season. How he comes in with a 10% matchup advantage over Seahawks corner Shaquille Griffin. And in addition, Seattle has one of the worst passing defenses of all time. They are allowing 328.8 opponent passing yards per game. Now, you might say that Sterling Shepard's production will go down with Colt McCoy at quarterback, but looking at Shepard's line last week, he had 7 receptions for 64 yards. 3 of those receptions came in the second half from Colt McCoy after Daniel Jones already got injured. So I think that Sterling Shepard is going to be Colt McCoy's best friend out there because he catches a lot of passes and he's always open and he catches a lot of short passes. So I think Colt McCoy will look for Sterling Shepard as a security blanket, a lot of short receptions to get Colt McCoy going in this game against Seattle. And that's why I like Sterling Shepard over 4.5 receptions in this game against the Seattle Seahawks. The next player prop that we are going to look at today, we have Devonta Adams receptions line, which is at over under 6.5 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Devonta Adams comes into this game with a 23% matchup advantage against Eagles corner Darius Slay. Now, we saw what DK Metcalf did to Darius Slay on Monday Night Football, and it was not pretty for Slay. Metcalf going for 10 catches for 177 yards on him. Now, Adams has been tearing up every single player he faces in the NFL. This guy's been on an absolute tear this season, and he's cleared this 6.5 receptions number in 5 of his last 6 games. The sole game where he did not clear this was against the Chicago Bears last week in Week 12. That game was a blowout. He had 6 receptions, so he didn't clear it by 0.5. Now, Philadelphia has been good against the pass for the most part, so this is not a matchup-based player prop I'm doing. This is just based on Devonta Adams being a tank this year and just being a dominant wide receiver, and this line being a little bit too low. I think that it should probably be at 7.5, not at 6.5. And Adams comes into this a 33% target share. That's ridiculous. It's first in the NFL. He's also seeing 11 targets per game and 8.2 receptions per game. I think he hits his over 6.5 receptions in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Just too low of a line for a receiver. That's just way too good. The next player prop that we are going to talk about today, we have Deebo Samuel's receiving yards prop, which is at over under 56.5 in this Monday Night Football game against the Buffalo Bills. Deebo Samuel comes into this week with the 10th highest matchup advantage of all wide receivers on this slate. He has a 33% matchup advantage over Bills corner Teron Johnson. He'll also likely see some Tre'Davious White as well. Now, that won't be easy at all. However, this is another prop that is not about the matchup. Now, the Bills don't have a great passing defense, but they also don't have a bad passing defense. They're about average. They rank 18th in opponent passing yards per game, and they rank 17th in coverage. I'm taking this over here because this is a ridiculously low line for Deebo Samuel. 56.5, in my opinion, is a ridiculous number. Now, keep in mind, last week was Deebo Samuel's first game since Week 7. He comes in against a great Los Angeles Rams defense and goes for 11 for 133. So I think that Deebo Samuel, when he plays, he's just a focal point of this 49er offense, and I think it's going to remain that way. As a result, I expect him to easily hit this over 56.5 receiving yards line this week against the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. For the last NFL player prop that we are going to talk about today, we have Stefon Diggs receiving yards prop, which is at over under 79.5 receiving yards. Now, Stefon Diggs comes into this game with an extremely tough matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. He'll match up against Richard Sherman, who I believe has only played around 2 games this year. He's been out all year due to injury, but Diggs has a minus 12% matchup advantage against Sherman. He'll also see a little bit of Jason Verrett, which will be extremely tough on him. Now, the 49ers, their passing defense is so good. They rank 4th in the NFL in coverage and 4th in opponent passing yards per game. Diggs has cleared this number several times this year, and he's honestly had a career year. Diggs has been unbelievable this year. There have been several times where I bet his over receptions and it hit. He has been so good, but this is one of the toughest matchups he'll face all year. Sherman and Verrett, that's no joke at all. I like Stefon Diggs to hit his under 79.5 receiving yards in this game against the San Francisco 49ers. So I had 7 straight overs, and now I have 1 under here. So this is the first under I've done in a really long time. Now, here's the reason I don't like unders is because 1, they're harder for me to hit personally. 2, they are just a lot less fun to root for. And I had been doing really well just betting over, so I figured I'd stick to it. Didn't have a great day last Sunday, so I was like, you know what? I'll throw in an under for this slate, see how it works out. So there it is, your 1 under of the week. Stefon Diggs under 79.5 receiving yards in this game. And that is a wrap for this week's NFL Player Props show. Just a reminder, if you didn't already, be sure to like this video and be sure to subscribe to this channel. It really helps me out. It really helps Sal out. In addition, be sure to follow me on Twitter at sports_bird. I gained a ton of followers on Twitter last week, and I had a ton of people tweeting at me about player props. That's always so much fun for me. That's probably my favorite part about doing this. I love interacting with all of the people that watch this video. It makes all this so much more fun. So be sure to follow me there. I will be updating my picks before the games on Sunday and before the games on Monday, possibly adding picks, possibly subbing in picks. So be sure to be checking that out. And also be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Sportsbird. I have my college football betting picks released every Friday. My waiver wire picks for fantasy football released on Tuesdays. The link is in the description below for that. And that's all we got today. So goodbye, everyone, and good luck with your prop betting this week.